Hello everyone, Historical Modeler here. In today's video, I will be comparing the 1 to 700 scale RMS Titanic kits by Revell and HobbyBoss. These are easily the best 1 to 700 Titanic kits on the market today, but by the end of the video, we will see which one proves to be the superior model. Let's start by looking at the hull from the Revell model. It comes in two halves, though the superstructure walls are molded on, which I personally prefer. The plating and window placement look historically correct overall, though I did notice excess flash in some of the windows and on the port side of the stern. I removed some of it with an X-Acto knife. I also cut off some of the extraneous plastic on top of the superstructure. Having worked on the hull for a few minutes, I decided to assemble the parts to get a better impression of it for this video. The two halves were relatively easy to align, and they glued together painlessly with Tamiya extra thin cement. Looking at the assembled hull, I was pleased by its overall shape and by the presence of plating on the stern. The stern section also had correct porthole placement on sea deck, which is rare to see. The seam line in this area is really obvious though. Not the best fit, but for an older model, it's not the worst. It's great that Revell has the bottom of the hull fully plated. Titanic kits are generally smooth and untextured in this area, so this is a rare and very welcome feature. The plating around the anchor is incorrect, but the hawse pipe on the front of the bow has an accurate and elongated shape, which has been molded incorrectly on practically every other Titanic kit that I've come across. It's safe to say that this hull is above average compared to other Titanic kits, even in larger scales. Even though the plating around the anchors is incorrect and the plastic is not the best quality with all its flash, there are certain unique features on this hull that are consistently neglected by other models. The HobbyBoss hull is impressive in its own right. Where this hull stands out is in the quality of its injection molding. The plating is more subtle and to scale than that of Revell. HobbyBoss's hull comes in one piece, but the superstructure walls have to be glued on separately. Rollers on the forecastle and poop decks were molded on, which was a frustrating feature, seeing as they were slightly oversized and difficult to remove without compromising the shape of the sea deck walls in these areas. The stern shape is a little less accurate than Revell's, but HobbyBoss did correctly replicate the plating around the area where the anchors should be. There's an egregious omission with this model, as there are no anchors for the hull. Fortunately, there is a 3D printed detail set that includes anchors, but the fact that they don't come with the kit is a remarkable oversight. There's no plating on the bottom, and the forward hawse pipe has an incorrect circular shape. HobbyBoss's superstructure walls proved to be more impressive. The windows and portholes look very sharp and are for the most part accurately placed. Expansion joints are also modeled on these superstructure walls, something I haven't seen in any kit besides the 1 to 200 trumpeter. Each model comes with a display stand, with HobbyBoss's being the finer of the two in my opinion. Both hulls are essentially the same length and I believe are suitably proportionate to the real Titanic. It is frustrating that the Revell hull has a correct forward hawse pipe, but inaccurate anchor plating, while HobbyBoss manages to do the inverse. The shape of the water line on HobbyBoss's hull is also an irritating artifact from the 1 to 200 trumpeter kit. With such stunning injection molding capabilities, HobbyBoss had the opportunity to create a really sharp-looking hull with more accuracy, but Revell, with its appropriate shape, correct forward hawse pipe, and plated bottom, is the slightly better hull in my opinion, despite its quality control issues. Taking a look at the forecastle and poop decks now, both of these kits feature details that are frequently neglected on other Titanic models. The bollard bases have an accurate rectangular shape, and the forecastle piping and machinery are pretty well represented. Revell has the forecastle, well decks, B deck, and poop deck molded on as one piece, while HobbyBoss's forecastle and poop decks are separately molded. HobbyBoss certainly has the better forecastle and poop decks. The deck plating is beautifully crisp, and there are recessed areas under these decks, whereas there is nothing but a wall of plastic on the Revell kit. Furthermore, there are no bulky plastic stairs molded on, which enables the modeler to include finer photo etch parts. There are more separately applied parts required for the HobbyBoss poop deck, particularly with regards to benches and crane bases. Revell has their benches and crane bases molded onto the deck, making painting a more tedious task. Comparing the forecastle decks side by side, one can see the ways in which the HobbyBoss model stands out. The forward anchor well is actually a well, whereas the Revell anchor well is strangely placed slightly above the rest of the deck. HobbyBoss also features raised planking beneath the anchor chains. The forward cover hatch is the correct height and shape, and there is more opportunity for detail since the steam winches are separate parts. There is a bulky quality on the Revell poop deck that comes with molding on all the benches, crane bases, and stairs. The docking bridge supports are also molded on, contributing to the unrefined appearance and the struggle to come when the modeler starts painting this. With more separately applied details on the HobbyBoss poop deck, the modeler will have a much easier time achieving a clean paint job. The Revell boat deck shares similar traits to the Forecastle poop decks, with benches, machinery, and the skylight to the aft grand staircase molded on. To Revell's credit, the bench placement is mostly spot on, and the graded pattern for the skylight is accurate. I was disappointed to see the well-deck cargo hatches molded onto the HobbyBoss decks. If they were separate parts, they would have been much easier to paint. We see here again examples of the stunning deck planking that has been molded into the plastic. The boat deck has virtually no molded on details, save for some walls to the bridge and a casing for 2 staircases on each side of the ship. The expansion joints are visible as well. Taking a look at the kits overall, it's clear that Revell has fewer parts and is a more straightforward build. Kits with simple construction and lots of molded detail tend to be more difficult to paint. The HobbyBoss kit, while seemingly more intricate, enables a cleaner paint job with fewer small molded bits cluttering the decks. It's much easier, in my opinion, to paint smaller parts, then attach them to the larger assembly. It will also be easier to use improved aftermarket parts on the HobbyBoss model, since you won't have to go in and sand or scrape away too many molded elements. It's worth noting the ways that each manufacturer handles windows for their Titanic model. The Revell windows have little detail and are mostly open spaces, which would make it easy to install photo etch frames. Inversely, the HobbyBoss windows are beautifully detailed but would be tedious to drill out if the modeler wanted to use brass parts. For an out-of-the-box build, however, these windows are stunning. We'll now compare Titanic's more iconic characteristics on these models, starting with the forward superstructure and bridge wings. The space between the bridge wings and the A-deck wall on the Revell kit seen on the left is narrow, which hurts the appearance of this highly visible area. The HobbyBoss forward superstructure looks better. I find it a bit strange that there is no space above the bridge windows on the HobbyBoss model, but the width of the bridge roof will fill this space. The officer's quarters roof looks well proportioned on both models. We see several molded vents on the Revell model, as well as the grand staircase skylight. These details are separate parts on the HobbyBoss roof, but there is more detailed grading on the funnel bases. HobbyBoss molded the skylights to the Marconi room, while Revell omitted these features entirely. Revell included accurate water pipe detail on its funnels. We also see some very well-shaped ladders, though they are a bit bulky for the scale. Rivet detail is present, though it is much too raised. There are no water pipes on any of the HobbyBoss funnels, another bizarre omission from a generally well-researched model. The rivet detail is excellently molded, however. HobbyBoss molded all of its lifeboats and davit pairs separately. It is interesting that every single lifeboat is uncovered. The Revell lifeboats and davits are molded as a single piece. They don't look particularly refined, but at least they are covered, which accurately reflects the lifeboat's appearance when the Titanic was at sea. The cranes on the Revell model are quite bulky looking, and the cables are represented by a thick piece of plastic. HobbyBoss's cranes require a little more assembly, but features some nice grading and could easily be detailed with thin rigging wire. Both kits come with a set of decals. Revell has decals for the shear stripe, waterline markings, and nameplates for the ship and stand. It also includes flags. The HobbyBoss decals are much more extensive, including all of the flags found in the Revell kit, as well as wavy variants and the Royal Mail pennant. There are also warning signs for the stern. In addition to the decals, HobbyBoss has a small photo etch sheet for funnel tops, the compass tower, steam pipes on the forecastle deck, and doors along the superstructure towards the stern. In conclusion, it's pretty clear that HobbyBoss has made the better 1-700 Titanic, all things considered. That being said, there are some bizarre choices that really prevent this kit from reaching its full potential, especially considering the stunning quality of the parts. For those of you who are building the Revell Titanic, don't be discouraged. I have seen some gorgeous builds from that kit, and either one of these models has the potential to be museum quality. In the coming months, I plan to make some videos showing the construction of each of these kits. I'm also planning on doing a super detailed build of the HobbyBoss model someday, but that might be later in the year. In the more immediate future, I'll be making a video on painting this brass HON3 locomotive, which should provide me with some good airbrushing review before I embark on another Titanic project. Thank you all so much for watching and helping the channel grow. It has recently reached 3,000 subscribers, and I hope each of you will continue to enjoy my projects with tiny ships and trains. Until next time, and happy modeling.